The Guardians trade star player Andrés Giménez to the Blue Jays. Before we even get into anything, what was your gut reaction when you found out this news? John, you started for 30-second takes. Eric, go ahead.
Terrible. I mean, period. Beginning and terrible. You had a team, like John said, that was competing to go to a World Series, and the product on the field, that final 4-1 scoreline against the Yankees might not be indicative, but they looked like they could go to the World Series. Whether or not anyone's beating the Dodgers in the near future is a different question, but we have a team that's ready to make a push for a pennant, and we said, nah, let's go backwards. Awful.
John, what about you, man?
I agree with Eric. It's bullshit. You said gut reaction. My gut reaction was, what? You've got to be kidding me. So I've lived in Cleveland and watched the Dolans on this team long enough to know that we're a quadruple A farm team. And I hate it. It pisses me off, but I have come to accept it that when your mega stars get to the point where they're going to get a $500 million contract, there's no way that they're going to pay to keep him here. This wasn't that. He was under contract for another 5 years. He's a Gold Glove Award winner. His WAR is in the top 5 in Major League Baseball. Now, I know in this age, everybody's, if you're not hitting 330 and hitting 48 home runs, people go, oh, well, you're not an offensive producer. But WAR is also about defense. And this guy in the field was as good as they come at second base. So who are we going to replace him with? Like, I don't get it. It's like it's an answer to a question that nobody asked.
Yeah, so I had very similar reactions. Something that came to my mind, and I know we'll get into it in a second, I'll introduce it and everything, was what did we get in return? Is it worth our time? Why would they do this? It felt like he was one of the very safe players on this team with the contract that he had going on, the 7 years, basically like, what was it, like $10 million a year or whatever it was?
15, yeah.
He was locked up.
It kept going up, but not by a much.
You get what I'm saying. I'm basically averaging it out roughly.
Very team-friendly contract.
Yeah, it was a very team-friendly contract. That's the main point of where I'm at. So why are we moving this way? My second reaction was actually, not to bring up Matt again, to text Matt, because when we went to opening day, I believe it was 2023 opening day, he spent like $250 on an Andrés Giménez authentic jersey. So I was like, oh, hell, he's probably pissed right now. But
never do it in Cleveland.
Nah, I have way too many Cleveland jerseys at this point. So here we are. I'm doing all right now. Bo Naylor is still on the roster, gentlemen.
For now.
Yeah.
I digress. Why don't we go into the trade terms, though, and then kind of process the emotions a little bit? They let this thing draw out for a while. It was a couple hours before we knew everything that went down. So, Eric, if you could please pull this up for me so I can read it much easier. The first part of this trade, we send Andrés Giménez and Nick Sandlin, the relieving pitcher, to the Blue Jays for Nick Mitchell, a prospect, and Spencer Horwitz, a first baseman. But he's also played some second base. He can play the field. He was a questionably interesting player. He was pretty old for being a rookie last year. He was 27, I believe, but he comes in.
Utility
guy. A textbook Cleveland Guardians pickup. When you saw this part of the trade, how were you feeling? Hold on.
Sorry.
We'll get to that in a second. How were you feeling, John?
Worse. The guy was hitting, I think last year he hit something like 265. He had less than 20 home runs. He might have had less than 10. He doesn't drive runs in.
I believe he had like 15 or something like that, and that's me shooting off of memory right now, not looking it up.
Yeah, and to be honest, and this isn't the end-all be-all, right? It's not like football where the position players of the NBA where there's only 3 or 4 guys on each team who are superstars who are worth knowing. Baseball rosters are huge, and I don't know a ton about the Blue Jays. So I had to Google it to see what we were getting, and magic beans and a case of Gatorade and some chewing tobacco, whatever, no shade. I hope Spencer Horwitz comes here and finds the fountain of youth and hits 300 next year and plays second base and does a great job. I'm not going to root for him, but yeah, my initial reaction was, what did we get? And then there was nothing. And then my second reaction was, who? Once I saw the names. And then one of the who's just got traded to Pittsburgh. So
we'll get to Pittsburgh in a second. Eric, what were your thoughts?
Well, that was a perfect like who's on first joke moment for you, John. But I mean, similar, yeah. What's going on? They're trying to cut salary. Who's going to play second base? Um, this is dumb. I hate this team. I hate the Dolans.
Yeah, I was with
will
you
say-
in the same vein. Something else that came up in my mind after this was, okay, well, Benzana must be coming along pretty nicely because they're getting ready to bring him up. My other thought is, well, there goes Josh Naylor because we just traded for a first baseman and he's been kind of on the block or rumored to be on the block anyway. I still think he gets traded. We'll get to that in a second as well. And to me, I was just like, the return on investment isn't really there. I start to reason with it a little bit more as we go on, but I'd like to go on to the next part of the trade, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, it was just a salary dump. Most of the time when you hear the words trade in sports, you're thinking we moved an asset for other assets. At least with the Guardians in the past, you move a player like Giménez and you get, the next Frankie Lindor and the next Josh Naylor, who nobody's heard of, but in 2 years, they're playing well. This isn't that either. This is just we didn't want to pay him $100-some-odd million over the next 5 years, so let's figure out some place to dump him and pay less for the team next year.
Yeah, and John and I talked about this a little bit, but first of all, I don't think we're getting the next Frankie Lindor ever from a trade like this. And second of all, I'm so tired of, okay, we're going to make a trade for the future. We're here. We have a window. We could maybe go out and win this thing with a couple pieces, and we're just rolling over and showing our belly.
Well, let's talk about the couple pieces. Eric, I want you to put up the next part of this trade because this is where I start to dwindle a little bit from you guys, just a little bit. So we then package good old Spencer Horwitz, trade him off to Pittsburgh. John doesn't have to root for him and hope he bats 300 like he said he was thinking in the moment earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We receive Luiz Ortiz, who was a rookie pitcher last year, who played very well. He had a 3.32 ERA, he had 107 Ks, a 1.11 WHIP, as well as two prospects, Josh Hartle and Michael Kennedy. So basically, we picked up three prospects and a quality starting pitcher for Andrés Giménez. What were your reactions once you saw this? Is it still more of the same before I go into my thought process, I guess, should be my question.
Yeah, it's a shell game. We needed starting pitching, and I don't hate the fact that we got a decent one. We needed some pitching period, so you can't be like, oh, that was a dumb move. But we also created a hole at second base that we have to fill that we don't have anything for. So you add some over here, you take some away over here. I don't know. And I mean, unless you get Roger Clemens in his prime or Pedro Martinez, I don't value starting pitching as much as everyday players because they can only affect the game once every 4 starts.
That's a hot take, in my opinion.
See, I disagree with that a little bit, though, because, I mean, I think our Achilles heel, especially in that Yankees series this year, was the starting pitching, right? I just don't think the team was there in terms of starting pitching to combat a team full of bats like the Yankees were, who, ended up beating us in 5.
Yeah, pitching, I think, is the key to winning championships now. There's a reason that the Dodgers went out and got Blake Snell when they just won the World Series. It seems ridiculous, but the arms are what goes first typically. That said, when we talk about baseball is still a game of the little things. And little things add up to runs, and that's how you win baseball games. And not having somebody at second base, like John was saying, that's not a little thing. That's a big thing. How many runs now are we going to give up because we plug in who knows at second base that we weren't giving up before? That could be the difference between winning and losing.
That was the other thing I was going to say, too. To say we have a hole at second base and we don't know what we're going to put there. I'm not discrediting Andrés Giménez, and I'm going to get down the path of why I don't absolutely hate this trade in a second. But we have a lot of prospects on the infield level of baseball, right? Juan Brito is a step away from coming up here. He plays second base. Benzana is a name that we can mention pretty easily. Who
They're
plays
called
second
prospects for a reason. There is a gulf between Gold Glover and prospect, and that gulf is extremely wide.
I agree with you on that point, but at some point, these players are going to get called up. Angel Martinez has shown decent flashes. He can play second base. There's options here that, to me, it made sense to move on from him for one thing. And John, you kind of already alluded to it. It's the decline in his offense. When we signed him to the contract extension, he was batting .297. He then subsequently batted .251 and .252. For a small market team, I'm not giving the Dolans credit or trying to bail them out of this situation because it is a cheap move. It feels like a cheap move. I agree with you guys.
I don't. It makes it feel better than it did initially, but I still stand by my take. And Eric, you made a couple of points there that I don't know if I'd agree with 100%. I think the Dodgers won the World Series because they have Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani hitting 800.
Well, that doesn't hurt, yeah.
As well as a platoon of pitching, though, John.
They do have pitching, but I don't know. It depends on where you put the onus for the series. If you go back and look at us playing the Yankees, we scored 2 and 3 runs a bunch of times, and they scored 6, 7, and 8 runs a bunch of times because your lineup is your lineup, and you have to play them and face them every day.
And then they got demolished by LA. If all things are equal and you have two big bat teams, then it's going to come down to pitching.
So hear me out.
Or who makes the play in the moment. I mean, you could argue game one.
That could be a whole 1 hour show.
Right.
Good offense beats good pitching.
So hear me out for a
7-game
second.
series because there's 7 games and the pitchers, no matter how good they are, can only pitch twice, maybe 3 times for your ace in the series. At some point, the Aaron Judges and Giancarlo Stantons outweigh the pitchers, unless you have like the Atlanta Braves in the 90s with Smoltz and Maddox and Glavine. Like that does not happen very often. But I could be wrong. That's a long-standing debate. Does great pitching beat great hitting, or vice versa? But I see a lot of teams that score a lot of runs do a lot more than the Guardians in the playoffs.
Sounds like a fantastic segment to pick up later on. I want you guys to walk with me for a second, though. So I started alluding to it. I started explaining why the trade doesn't bother me. We end up getting a young pitcher that had a solid year. He was not the best pitcher in Pittsburgh by any means. Obviously, Paul Skeens was. But we did end up getting another starting pitcher, and we cleared cap space from a guy who has been batting lesser than what you would want to pay as a small market team. The reason I don't hate this move is because it clears cap space for one of two things, in my opinion. A Steven Kwan extension that I think is a player that is more important to keep on this roster than Andrés Giménez, as much as I love him, or in the short term, another starting pitcher, because we really only have Bibee and this guy right now because Bieber isn't going to be back until mid-season. What do you guys think about that?
I hate to be the ticky-tack words matter guy, but they didn't clear cap room because there's no cap.
Okay, you know what I mean. They cleared the Dolan cap. Let me put it
I was
going to
say it's an important point to make because there's 20 owners who just keep Giménez and still go out and get these guys, and they pay more. And we chose not to do that.
I don't disagree. I'm playing the cards that I'm dealt, though. It's like being dealt the worst hand of poker.
They're just shit cards. I mean, do you guys remember Adam Miller, our pitching prospect, that he was going to be dominant for a decade and it never worked out? And this is what we're constantly talking about. I will say, out of anybody in baseball, the Guardians front office has done a better job of using less is more kind of philosophy. They've gotten us in positions where we have no reason to be in it, and we are. And a lot of that is through these prospects that hit. But to be there and finally have a team and you say, all right, we're there. We just made the ALCS. That's a hell of an accomplishment. And now you don't care about that. You don't want to grow from that momentum. If you don't think that impacts ticket sales in the negative, if we don't go out and compete for the Central and compete for pennants, then you're crazy. So the business side of it doesn't even make sense either.
No, I agree with you. I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit here, right? Because I am very much on the Dolans are cheap. I don't like that we lost Giménez because he's a fan favorite. He's one of the faces of the franchise. I'm very much on that. But, if you're looking at it, how I have to look at it with where we're at in terms of our ownership and everything we have going on right now, I'd rather have another starting pitcher and see what we got in Brito, or have Quan extended and move forward that way than a guy who's potentially falling off a cliff batting wise compared to what he was 2 years ago.
See, this is the point, though. It shouldn't be an either or. It shouldn't be, oh, now we can extend Quan. It's small market thinking, and I'm so sick of it. The Jacobs would have never done this. They brought in talent. They paid the talent. And it's just sad how far we've fallen. And I know we've talked about it before, but it's time to sell the damn team. When you start doing a disservice to fans, it's time to sell. Go in, cash out. I mean, you're going to make $3 billion. Just go take the money and be done, because you should not be owners of a franchise. You cannot own a sports team today without being a billionaire. The Dolans are great people, but they're not billionaires, and they shouldn't own a team.
I agree with Eric, and I think, Noah, in your one comment, you accidentally or purposefully, I don't know, hit on my exact point when you said, I'd rather have a starting pitcher and then, quote, see what we got with insert player prospect here. How many other teams that were in the Final Four in baseball, right, the ALCS and NLCS, are going into next year with we moved a Gold Glove defender around. Let's see what we got.
No, I agree with you, man. It makes sense on paper, schematically and everything that's going on, and I get why they made the move. Maybe this is me just using this to cope with the fact that I'm upset that we lost Andrés Giménez. I want to show you guys a tweet real quick because I thought this was really sad. This is from Brian Rocchio, throwing it up right now. Obviously, it's translated. Good luck on your new team, bro. The happiness of the poor is short-lived.
Damn.
Very sad. Very sad. He tweeted that. That was his actual X account. Prayers to Brian Rocchio, man. I love how the city, have you guys noticed the city is acting almost like it's a funeral, though?
Yeah, it's because it's what it feels like. And it's rinse and repeat. It's like Charlie Brown in the football. We keep kicking it and expecting different results, and I don't know why. Some of it's on us, but I think baseball's different, man. The Browns are always going to have a following. And when the Cavs get hot, no matter how long it does or doesn't take, they always fill up that building. It's smaller. Basketball's different in this town, and LeBron did something that I think changed the landscape of sports here forever. The Indians/Guardians have always been a team that was like, you got to take me on a few dates, and we got to have a long engagement before we get married every time. And there's only 10,000 diehard Guardians fans who are going to go to the games every year. To fill that stadium up, it takes a couple years of goodwill and playing well. And they finally got to a point where we thought, hey, this is going to be like the last run with Raji Davis and Kipnis in the Cubs World Series, where we had the talent to compete for at least a couple years before everybody left, because Giménez was under contract for forever, and they're just ripping pieces out of this lineup and out of this defense for seemingly no reason. And then they're, pissing on us and telling it's raining with, we got, a 3-ish ERA guy who pitched pretty well. And don't get me started, National League pitchers coming to the American League don't fare as well as the other way around most of the time either. So this guy could blow up in our face, a 6 ERA after 7 starts. Like, I don't know. I just don't. I get
one point,
and I understand. It just pisses me off because the team need, get a starting pitcher and a catcher, and let's go win 113 games next year and see what we can do. The AL Central was so tough, and we still won all those games.
Yeah. You made one point that I completely disagree with. I don't think that Cleveland are fair weather baseball fans, and I know you didn't say fair weather.
Nope.
But we set the record for sellouts in the 90s.
No,
and I know season for the modern era as well. This past season,
yes, because we warmed up. I'm going to play the old guy card on you. The Indians sold out that streak. It was the perfect storm. They had an owner who would spend. They had a roster that developed at the right. The Indians hadn't made the playoffs for 40 straight years going into the new stadium, and nobody was at the old stadium. I remember running for like 13 sections for 2 minutes to get foul balls because there were whole swaths of that stadium with nobody in it. They
I
had a
love
new
that John's
stadium.
old enough to have gone to Municipal, by the way.
Right.
Yeah, my first Browns game, and I went to a ton of Indians games. My first Brown games was at Municipal too.
And remember it.
Right.
Yeah. Nazi Mustafa got a pick 6 against the Phoenix Cardinals, I think they were at the time. Yeah, it was a great game, 1994.
But to your
no,
point,
what I was going to say super quickie is that the Browns were gone. So all of those people, it was the 90s. Everybody had money to spend. The team was exceptionally good. Bill Clinton came to throw out the first pitch because we had the crown jewel of Major League Baseball, and we still have a great stadium. And then on top of all of that, nobody had any time or anything to spend on the Browns because they were gone for 4 years. We'll never sell out 455 straight games again, ever.
you don't think if they put a World Series winning team on the field?
No.
Interesting.
I disagree.
Yeah, I mean, it is Brownstown. I agree with you there, but you got to remember, too, it also held 15 to 20,000 more people as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a different time. We could go. That's another topic we got to make a note for. And I'm not saying we can't go on runs, but to sell out 81 games a season for 7 straight years, I mean, no.
My point is more.
Do that again.
We've talked about it before. The biggest thing facing some Cleveland sports franchise is apathy, and when you have people like, I don't want to go buy merch. I don't want to put anything into this team because they're not giving me anything. That's apathy. And that's what they're facing because we will be there to support. We were there this season to support a good baseball team. You put the product on the field, we're going to show up. I don't know where those dollars are coming from. They're probably not coming from Browns. You're right. But they're coming from somewhere. You're not going to Playhouse or something. That's going to happen. But you make moves like this, and let's say we don't win the Central, we don't make the playoffs next year. I mean, what's the point? Why put any energy into this team?
Yeah, I'm with you guys.
What I mean, I'll still watch. I watched I couldn't tell you, but I watched part of over 100 games last year on TV. Every night, when in doubt, Guardians go on between dinner and bedtime for the girls. But going to the ballpark, selling it out, and being part of that atmosphere is something that people are more hesitant to do. Yes, the sports fans in Cleveland can still support the Guardians, but you think you're going to be packing in, 100,000 people for a weekend series with the Red Sox this coming season with this roster? Like, if you keep pulling pieces off of it, I don't think so.
Well, exactly. That's what do you get? Combine that with the fact that where do you even watch them? You need the MLB app and network now to watch
there's
them.
no TV deal this year. That's the biggest problem here is I just don't know what that's going to look like. They're also talking about things like cutting Dollar Dog and those type of promotions that get people in the door and get people interested in this team. I don't know what the trajectory of this Cleveland Guardians franchise is going to look like.
Wait, they're talking about cutting Dollar Dog Night?
Yeah, you haven't seen
in the
that
words
yet.
of the Costco founder, if you change the price of the hot dog, I'll effing kill you. Are you kidding me? Like, that's such a fun. Jesus.
Gentlemen,
I told you guys the story about the Bengals owner who gave everybody a home and away jersey, and then they had to buy their own jerseys from the team shop if they ripped because they were so cheap. That is where we're heading. You're going to show up, and you're going to walk in the gate. It's going to be like McDonald's. They're going to be like, hey, go to the kiosk and scan your stuff because we fired all the people. Like, they are so.
Well, they already have that there to begin with, but the people still scan it for you.